The air at the Misano World Circuit usually carries the scent of salt from the Adriatic and the roar of 1,000 fans. But today, the grandstands are empty. The only sound is the rhythmic metallic clinking of a cooling exhaust pipe and the sharp click of Cadillac heel boots hitting the concrete. Inside the garage of the number 54, the atmosphere is heavy, not with the heat of the Italian sun, but with the suffocating weight of expectation. Toprak Razgatlioglu, the man they call the Stoppie King, the rider who redefined what is possible on a superbike, was supposed to be untouchable in 2026. Yet as the season unfolded, a terrifying reality began to set in. The union between the Turkish phenom and his German-engineered M1000RR was fracturing. In the early rounds, the bike didn't feel like an extension of his body, it felt like a rival. Every entry into a corner was a gamble, every exit a struggle for stability. The paddock whispers had already begun. Was the bike too rigid? Had the development reached a dead end? Or more dangerously, had the champion lost his edge? This private test at Misano wasn't just a practice session, it was an interrogation. If the answers didn't surface today, the 2026 title wouldn't just be out of reach, it would be a haunting reminder of a dream that collapsed under its own ambition. But as the visor snapped down, something shifted. No one inside the paddock expected what would unfold next, and it would change everything for him, his team, and the entire season. To understand the stakes of this test, you have to understand the anatomy of a crisis. Toprak's riding style is a mathematical anomaly. He lives on the front tire, braking later and harder than any human on the grid, often with the rear wheel hovering inches off the tarmac. To do this, a rider needs a telepathic connection with the front end. They need to feel the exact moment the rubber begins to protest. But in the opening months of 2026, that feel had vanished. The bike was a ghost. Reports from the garage suggested that Toprak was riding on ice, unable to find the limit because the limit kept moving. The chassis was fighting his ergonomics and the electronics were second-guessing his throttle inputs. Every time he tried to push, the bike pushed back, leading to a series of uncharacteristic errors and a visible decline in his mid-corner confidence. Behind the garage doors, the tension was visceral. Engineers pored over telemetry that told them the bike was fast, while the rider told them it was unrideable. It was the classic motorcycling deadlock, the data versus the man. The team was at a crossroads. Either they redesigned the bike around the rider's unique anatomy, or they watched their championship aspirations evaporate in the Italian heat. Yet the real turning point happened away from the cameras, in the silent hours of the morning session. Misano is a circuit that demands technical perfection. With its combination of high-speed sweeps like Curvone and the agonizingly tight Tramonto, there is nowhere for a bad setup to hide. As the morning mist lifted over the Marco Simoncelli circuit, Toprak didn't go out to set a lap record. He went out to find himself. The strategy had changed. The team abandoned the search for raw horsepower and focused on the human-machine interface. They looked at the ergonomics, the way Toprak with his tall stature sat in the bike rather than on it. Small, almost microscopic adjustments were made. The angle of the handlebars, the distribution of weight between the axles, and the sensitivity of the ride-by-wire throttle. Observers noted a change in the air. The mechanical anger of the bike seemed to soften. The engine note was no longer erratic, it was a steady, rhythmic howl. From the start of the morning session, Toprak immediately demonstrated a different approach. His riding style was more aggressive, yet inexplicably more precise. He was no longer fighting the machine, he was beginning to lead it, but behind that calm expression in the pits, the pressure was still building fast. The breakthrough came when the team addressed the front-end crisis. For weeks, the biggest obstacle had been the lack of feedback from the tire under heavy load. By altering the front geometry and the chassis balance, the engineers finally gave Toprak the weapon he had been begging for. Suddenly, the signature Razgatlioglu style was back. He was delaying his breaking points, deep diving into the technical areas of Misano with a confidence that seemed to defy the laws of physics. The bike was no longer tucking or understeering, it was carving. The stability during braking, the very foundation of Toprak's dominance, had returned. But it wasn't just about the parts, it was about the communication. Every time he entered the pits, the discussions weren't just intense, they were surgical. The telemetry was no longer an argument, it was a roadmap. The shared vision that had been missing since the start of the season was finally manifesting. The team saw it in the lap times, which were becoming dangerously consistent. Even during several long runs, Toprak was able to maintain a rhythm that left the mechanics exchanging silent, stunned glances. However, the twist that followed would change the championship narrative entirely. Midway through the afternoon, the team decided to stop testing and start racing. They fueled the M1000RR for a full race simulation. This is the moment where most revivals fall apart. When the tires degrade, the heat rises and the old problems resurface. But as Toprak ticked off the laps, something staggering happened. The drop in performance that had plagued his early season races never came. He was maintaining a competitive pace on used rubber, navigating the narrow chicanes with a fluidity that suggested the ergonomic changes had drastically reduced his physical exertion. He was no longer muscling the bike, he was dancing with it. The most striking change, however, was the body language. The frustrated gestures, the confused headshakes, the slump of the shoulders that had characterized his previous outings, they were gone. In their place was a rider who appeared calmer and more lethal. He was setting fast laps that approached top-tier competitive standards on a track that is notoriously difficult to master. This indicated that his confidence in the bike was returning, a crucial element that no engine upgrade can replace. Yet this was only the beginning of a far bigger storm for his rivals. As the sun began to set over Misano, the data told a story that the rest of the grid would find terrifying. Toprak hadn't just fixed a few technical issues, he had rediscovered his flow. The revival was no longer a hope, it was a documented reality. The bike and the rider had finally become a cohesive unit, a machine capable of translating Toprak's aggression into pure, unfiltered speed. The psychological impact of this test cannot be overstated. In the world of elite motorsports, a rider who believes in his front tire is a rider who cannot be intimidated. The question marks that had surrounded his move to BMW were being answered one by one. The team had proven that they could listen, adapt, and deliver under extreme pressure. For the competitors, this progress is certainly not good news. A Toprak Razgatlioglu who has found his rhythm again is a predator. With his high adaptability and newfound stability, he has the potential to disrupt the dominance of his rivals and tear the 2026 standings apart. The paddock whispers have changed their tune. They are no longer asking what is wrong with Toprak, they are asking how they are going to stop him. The Misano World Circuit was more than just a testing ground today, it was the site of a resurrection. What began as a season-defining crisis has evolved into a season-defining comeback. All the pieces of the puzzle, the handlebar angles, the chassis geometry, the mental fortitude, have finally fallen into place. Toprak Razgatlioglu leaves Italy not just with a faster bike, but with the armor of a champion restored. The hard work, the late-night data sessions, and the relentless determination of his crew have paid off. If this trend continues, the podium will no longer be a distant memory, it will be his permanent residence. The 2026 season was once seen as a year of decline for the Turkish star. Now it looks like a year of evolution. The story of his comeback has only just begun, and the rest of the world is now on notice. Because when the Stoppy King finds his grip, the entire world of motorcycling has to brace for the impact. What happened at Misano left even his closest team members stunned, and what happens in the next race will likely leave the world speechless.